Tonight,
all of Israel was under attack. Luckily, we survived that night.
the world awaits Israel's response to Iran's weekend attack and the Lone Star State's border battle.
Let's say I'm resolute about what Texas is doing.
A CBN exclusive with Governor Greg Abbott about why he's fighting the Biden administration on how to handle illegal immigration. Plus, President Trump goes on trial in the hush money case with a prison sentence at stake. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Israel promises to exact a price on Iran. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. In Washington, I'm Caitlyn Burke. Israeli government is weighing a response following Iran's weekend drone and missile attack. While Israel vows to retaliate, world leaders are urging both sides to exercise restraint. Joining us now with the latest on growing Middle East tensions is CBN News White House correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, it seems like within Israel, it's not a question of if they'll target Iran for its attack, but more so how and when.
That's right, Caitlyn. Israel's war cabinet met again today to discuss potential military action, with one former Israeli UN ambassador and Knesset member telling CBN News a great defense is not enough.
They attacked a sovereign country with 300 rockets, missiles, and UAVs, and we cannot sit idly by. And my position is that we have to hit them hard to teach them a lesson that they will not do it again.
Thanks to divine protection, Israel's Iron Dome, and support from U.S., British, French, Jordanian, and Saudi forces, 99% of the projectiles were intercepted. Analysts call it a spectacular military achievement, given it was the largest attack of its kind ever put into the sky.
No, I want to thank all those who pray for us and stand with us. I think last night what we saw was the hand of God protecting Israel as well.
As the attack began, CBN News YouTube hosted a live report with Chuck Holton.
We prayed altogether 40,000 people. That's a stadium's worth of people. As we've prayed that God would thwart the plans of evil men, he came through last night and he answered our prayer.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant reportedly told his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin Sunday that Israel has no choice other than to respond.
We don't want to see a war with Iran. We don't want to see a broader regional conflict. We will do what we have to do to defend Israel.
President Biden told Prime Minister Netanyahu Israel needs to slow down and think through their response, warning the U.S. would not support a counterattack. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is coordinating a diplomatic response.
We don't seek escalation, but we'll continue to support the defense of Israel and to protect our personnel in the region.
Former IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus told CBN while thinking things through is good advice, it should not be confused with a lack of response.
This was a watershed moment in Middle Eastern history. Iran came out the shadows for the first time, did an unprecedented attack against Israel, an attack that, of course, must be met with equal or superior firepower from Israel. In my mind, there's no question about it.
Conricus adds it's crucial Israel not go it alone.
We don't want American soldiers to be in harm's way, but Israel definitely needs U.S. support, military and diplomatic, in order to take this battle back towards Iran and to really chart a new path for the Middle East after this tremendous aggression.
Iran's attack, which caused virtually no damage, a spectacular and embarrassing failure, although it also made clear Iran's intent was to cause destruction to Israel. The administration is urging the House to pass the bipartisan national security supplemental that already cleared the Senate so that Israel and Ukraine can continue to defend themselves against attacks. Caitlyn?
Enya Kravin is the Senior Director of Israel Programs in the National Security Network at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. She's currently located in Israel and joins us now for more. Enya, you experienced this attack from Iran firsthand. Can you share a little bit of what that was like?
Sure, absolutely. The attack started Israel time around 11, and everyone in Israel had been kind of on pins and needles because they had been hearing reports for days about an imminent attack, and then the attack would come within 24 to 48 hours. And then finally, late on the evening on April 13th, there was sirens going off all over the country, and people were told to shelter in place. And for many places in the country, you could look up in the sky and see some of those interceptions going on in the night sky. So it was very dramatic, but Israelis have been bracing this for over a week.
Now, many have said that the attack from Iran is unprecedented. Can you talk about why maybe the scope and the fact that it even happened at all is so significant?
Sure. So, as you know, Israel and Iran have been in a war for years. It was heightened after the events of October 7th, but they've been essentially fighting a proxy war that Iran has been carrying out through its regional proxies, as I said, set up by its expeditionary force. These proxies exist in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen with the Houthis, and also within the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza. So Iran's had this strategy of death by 1,000 cuts for Israel. And Israel's been thwarting back at these different proxies, but there hadn't been a direct confrontation like we saw over the weekend yet. And it was unprecedented in its size and scope, and the fact that it came from Iranian soil. It was a very bold move by Iranians. Yes, they signaled in advance, and yes, the Israelis and allies shot down 99% of the attack. It was a failed attack by every measure by the Iranians, but it was unprecedented in size. It was the biggest military swarm of projectiles that we've seen in warfare. There were over 300 that reached the region. They traveled over 1,000 miles from Iran. And they were shot down, some over Jordan, some over Syria, by not only Israeli, but also US, the Brits, and Jordanian defenses. So unprecedented that it came from Iran, unprecedented in size. And the good news out of all of this is that the regional security architecture works. 99% success rate with over 300 deadly missiles, over 6 tons of munitions that were sent to Israel. I mean, that's a pretty good success story for Israel and the allies.
Definitely. Now, in the little bit of time we have left, as you mentioned, this was significant because Iran directly attacked versus using its proxies. Do you think that this signals a new phase in Mideast escalation?
So what it definitely signals is that Israel has lost its deterrence. It demonstrates that Iran thinks they can get away with it. And I hope very much that Israel takes the time to think through a strategy, that it manages to get the allies on board that it can, and that it respond in a way that will recreate deterrence for Israel. Of course, Israelis can't live with the specter of this massive military that is committed to this destruction of the Jewish state, that is emboldened to the point where they can send 300 projectiles over Israel's skies. I mean, Israel was extremely lucky. It also had a week's advance notice and had all of its allies working in concert. But that won't always be the case. And I think it's time for Israel to send a message. It has to be the right message. It has to be calibrated, but deterrence must be restored.
All right, Enya Kraveen of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here at home, illegal border crossing arrests were down last month, partially due to Mexico's increased enforcement efforts. New Border Patrol numbers report more than 137,000 arrests in March, a decrease of more than 3,100 from February. These new numbers mark some of the lowest of the Biden administration, which saw a record high of nearly 250,000 arrests back in December. The March decrease comes as Mexico cracks down on the issue, more than tripling detainment so far this year compared to 2023. Texas Governor Greg Abbott tells CBN News he won't back down in his legal battle against the Biden administration over securing the southern border. The fight centers around a new measure allowing state law enforcement agencies to arrest illegal immigrants. CBN News chief political analyst David Brody brings us an exclusive interview from Austin, Texas.
The saying goes, everything is bigger in Texas. Well, that includes the fight over illegal immigration. Enter Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Thanks for inviting us inside the Texas government.
Pleasure to have you here.
He has a Texas-sized battle on his hands, not just at the border, but in Washington, D.C.
Joe Biden has a requirement under the Constitution to secure our national security. He's utterly failed at that.
And so Abbott has taken matters into his own hands. He's building a wall in a handful of border counties. The state has its own border czar. He's bussed illegal immigrants out of Texas and into liberal sanctuary cities. And his Operation Lone Star program has led to 500,000 illegal immigrant apprehensions and the seizure of almost 500 million lethal doses of fentanyl.
Illegal immigration has gone down in the state of Texas by 72%. At that very same time, it has increased in California, Arizona, and New Mexico by 24%. So it shows that what we are doing is working.
But the Biden administration says Texas has overstepped their authority, especially when Abbott installed razor wire in Eagle Pass or floating barriers in the Rio Grande. At the center of the illegal immigration fight here in Texas is a law backed by Governor Abbott giving state law enforcement agencies the power to arrest illegal immigrants. The Biden administration is fighting it, and most likely this will end up at the U.S. Supreme Court. While that works its way through the legal system, the tension mounts between the state of Texas and the feds.
I know this term of civil war, but in other words, skirmishes between the Texas law enforcement and the federal government. Are you concerned about that at the border if Biden gets another term?
Let's say I'm resolute about what Texas is doing.
How far will Texas go here? Because you can go pretty far.
Well, our goal is to make sure that we defend our border to the point we are able to completely reduce illegal crossings into the state of Texas.
But does that mean going into Mexico? Certain Republicans, like former President Trump and Ron DeSantis, have floated the idea of carrying out attacks on drug cartels inside Mexico. In the case of Governor Abbott, he officially called this an invasion. So according to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the Constitution, that means a state can engage in war if an invasion happens.
Have you thought about, is it off the table that you would go and get rid of these drug cartels, certain ones within Mexico, actually going into Mexico?
So I've already declared the drug cartels as terrorist organizations, and that authorizes law enforcement to take extra action against it. And you can have a war without actually invading a country. The war would not be against Mexico.
The war at this moment is here on the homeland, and one of Abbott's biggest and gravest concerns is those from the Middle East coming over that are on the terror watch list. Some of them are known, many are not. And just as much of a concern to Abbott are Chinese men of military age illegally entering the country.
Last year, there were more than 24,000. In the first part of this fiscal year, there's already another 22,000. Right. And so there's basically a Chinese military equivalent in the United States of America. And once again, no one knows what these people are up to.
Of course, those aren't the only ones coming over. There are families who are seeking asylum and a better life here in America and are desperate to get away from horrible conditions.
Some people will say, well, you need to have compassion. Others will say, well, wait, law and order, making sure there isn't chaos, is compassionate.
Well, chaos obviously is not compassionate.
Right.
But also what is not compassionate is the federal government of the United States enticing women, children, and others to be sexually assaulted by the drug cartels, physically abused, sometimes murdered by them, or enticing them into a situation where they drown trying to cross the river. There's nothing compassionate about a deadly border. There is something compassionate, however, about order in society. And what Texas is trying to achieve is order in our society.
In the meantime, Abbott's battle against the federal government rages on. David Brody, CBN News in Austin, Texas.
Coming up, the legal troubles of Donald Trump. What's at stake in the hush money case kicking off today in New York? Welcome back. The historic criminal trial of former President Donald Trump has officially begun. Trump is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Prosecutors say he did this to cover up an affair and influence the 2016 election. Trump has pleaded not guilty and denies all wrongdoing. He calls the trial political persecution.
This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. And that's why I'm very proud to be here. This is an assault on our country.
Right now, the task at hand is finding 12 jurors who can put their political views aside and weigh the evidence. Ultimately, they'll decide whether to convict or acquit a former U.S. president for the first time in history. Trump says he plans to take the stand to testify in his own defense. If convicted, he could face prison time. Once the jury is selected, testimony will begin, and that's expected to take 4 to 6 weeks. The FBI is reportedly launching a criminal investigation into the cargo ship that slammed into Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge last month, causing its deadly collapse. Agents boarded the Dolly with search warrants early this morning. They're focusing on what happened in the moments before, during, and after impact. Investigators are working to find out if the crew knew the ship had potential mechanical issues that made it dangerous to sail in the harbor. So far, divers have recovered 3 bodies from the wreckage. The 3 remaining victims are still missing underwater. Gender identity and the church. Resources to help Christian parents navigate the nation's hot topic issue when we come back. Welcome back. A new Vatican doctrine rejects the idea of sex changes. The 20-page Declaration on Human Dignity denounces the idea, declaring, quote, "We are called to protect our humanity, and this means accepting it and respecting it as it was created." The document notes the desire for gender-affirming care, quote, "amounts to a concession to the age-old temptation to make oneself God." With gender identity becoming one of the country's most talked about issues, the church is wrestling with how to respond. But for Christian parents with kids questioning their gender, resources are limited. Paul Petit reports on some of the help that's out there.
This is Jonathan West, who is now Jenna.
It came from nowhere.
Even in Christian homes like Melinda's, gender identity and transitioning is surging.
My son was gone, and this person in front of me was going to be changing, and it wasn't the person I knew.
Long hair, nails, hormone therapy, all part of Jonathan's transition process.
They went in and they took 2 inches off of each side of his collarbone, and they closed those together so that his shoulders would not be so broad.
Melinda can't figure out how she missed it. She says Jonathan grew up as a typical boy, playing baseball and attending youth group.
We really struggled on how to, as Christian parents, address this.
Jean and Anita Eggman are helping parents like Melinda. The couple leads a Christian support group at Cross Church in Springdale, Arkansas. Created to guide parents with same-sex attracted children, 40% of the group now includes parents of those who identify as trans.
It's basically helping parents navigate through all this, maintaining their faith, and being able to stand on the Word of God, but also show the love of God to their loved ones.
What we have seen, it's very unusual that someone reaches out for a support group right away. A lot of times they just try to work through it by themselves.
About Hope is part of the National Hope Restorative Network. Jean and Anita's group meet confidentially every week in this room. Many join online from across the nation, and all of them are given the same tools, now helping Melinda deal with her transitioning son.
When she first came to us, within the first few weeks, we were going through boundaries, creating healthy boundaries. And I remember her saying, I don't think I have any healthy boundaries. I don't have any boundaries.
An online resource for parents is called parentsofrogdkids.com. ROGD stands for Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria.
I would say that every parent goes through, like, what did I do wrong? I certainly did.
Started in 2017, the organization now has 3,000 members worldwide. It offers information to also help parents screen therapists who will not simply affirm their child's gender dysphoria.
If you go to a gender therapist and they say, I'm confused, and they say, well, you're trans and your problem is because your parents don't affirm you. Okay, well, that's just bad therapy.
Melinda's support group has taught her what she's up against and how to navigate her relationship with Jonathan.
What we see now is that how strong she's gotten, and
That's awesome.
she has learned it's okay to say no.
He won't receive gifts from me because I won't buy him anything pink.
In a culture that celebrates the transgender movement, this can be an uphill battle for parents. Through proper support, however, people like Melinda are learning to cope and trust.
They can't change them. And so in their Christian faith, they have to fall back on that the Lord is the only one that can really change somebody.
I am hoping and praying that as he learns who he is, he will learn who he is through Christ.
In Arkansas, Paul Petit, CBN News.
For parents concerned about their kids, experts recommend looking for big changes in their personality. They also say to keep tabs on your child's friend group, as well as social media and other online activity. For more information and resources, you can visit our website, cbnnews.com. Still ahead, a Boston Marathon event featuring man's best friend. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, runners from around the world hit the streets of Boston today for the 128th marathon. Ahead of the race, a moment to honor man's best friend. Dozens of golden retrievers and their owners gathered on Sunday to honor Spencer, a dog who served as the marathon's unofficial mascot until he lost a battle with cancer in 2023. Spencer became a race celebrity after 9 years of greeting runners along the route, holding a flag that said Boston Strong. Sunday's canine meetup included a Golden Strong walk to raise money for canine cancer research. Now, runners really looked forward to seeing Spencer along the route. So 2 weeks ago, a statue of Spencer was put up right in his usual spot so that he could be remembered. That's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. We will see you tomorrow.